Welcome to Emotion Well, EFR's podcast about all things related to emotional well-being. I'm Johanna Dunlevy, the EAP Operations Director for Employee and Family Resources, also known as EFR, and I'm the host of our podcast. As an FYI, EFR is located in Des Moines, Iowa, and we are Iowa's first employee assistance program and provide a variety of services you can learn more about at www.efr.org. I'm excited to be here today with Sara Klute Behn. Sara owns Your Wise Self with Sara, and we have known each other for the past maybe 3 years or so, but now we are collaborating together at EFR, and I'll share a little bit more about that as we move through the episode today, but just want to welcome Sara to Emotion Well and let her introduce herself to our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me, Johanna. I'm so happy to be here. So yes, as you mentioned, you and I have known each other for several years. I was working in the nonprofit healthcare philanthropy world for a local hospital for the last 20 years. So that's where we got the opportunity to work together and meet. And during that time, and actually for many years, I've had health and wellness just walking alongside of me in my journey of life. And ultimately, wanted to go back to school, and it just happened that the way that I stumbled upon yoga, and then I fell in love with yoga, and then I actually went into yoga therapy. So
Yes.
it was a master's in yoga therapy program. And when I got done with that, I really wanted to broaden out even further into working with people in more of a health coaching sense so that I could bring that yoga therapy with me and be a certified health coach. So I put those two things together and created Your Wise Self with Sara as a way to help women who are oftentimes in midlife experiencing anxiety, weight issues, all those kinds of things. So it was a perfect fit when EFR had an opportunity for more trainers. I was really excited to
Yes.
be able to bring some of the knowledge and information and expertise to your clients.
Absolutely. So we met I remember the day we met, it was at a coffee shop in the East Village with
Yes.
our mutual friend, Scarlett Lunning, who also has
Yes.
been on the podcast, and she's another one of our trainers here at EFR. So if you're listening and you're wondering what trainings are, we provide educational seminars and trainings and workshops to our EAP clients. And actually, if you don't have our EAP, you could still partner with EFR to have one of our trainers either virtually share information with your team members or come on site. But Sara is now one of our wellness trainers, and I'm very excited to have you on the team. And Scarlett's also on the team. So here we are, we're all back together. So you mentioned working in nonprofit healthcare philanthropy for about 20 years. And I'm just curious, a lot of people make career changes, at some point. And 20 years is a long time to be in a certain place, or at least, within a certain sector of work. And so what was that change like for you? And were you nervous about taking the leap and moving away
Sure.
from maybe something that felt more secure to something that felt a little more unknown?
Yes, absolutely. Gosh, I mean, I think anytime we make a change, it can be unsettling. I mean, change can be challenging for all of us. But like you said, it was 20 years into a career. But I also knew that I had this whole aspect of my life walking beside me, like I mentioned, with health and wellness. And I was really passionate about it. So as I moved into my 40s, and my world changed in multiple different ways, from divorce, and from two children grown up, and now they're both getting ready to be on their own.
Yeah.
I'm in this midlife space where I was like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do
Yeah.
this. And I also feel passionate enough about what I'm doing that I know that it was just something that in my heart and in my soul, literally, that I was ready for. And I wanted to actually take the education that I've been working so hard with and apply it and start my own business. So
Yeah.
I was ready ultimately. Is it scary? Of course, it's a little bit scary, but I just do really feel supported by multiple different ways to continue to move forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I like how you called it a midlife space, because I feel like people often refer to midlife changes as crises. And you don't have to have a crisis in your life to make a change. And in fact, when I think I'm in my midlife era as well, and I feel like I've had more of my crises prior to midlife than I'm
Right.
experiencing now. And so,
Right.
and obviously
Right.
there's a lot of my life yet to unfold. So who knows what that's going to look like. But I like how you
Yes.
called it a midlife space. And I think when we can hold space for ourselves, and if you want to go with like the Taylor Swift theme of eras, like the era of your life or the space of your life or the
Yes.
time in your life, because it's always changing. And when I train on our self care topic at EFR, I talk about how self care is getting to know yourself, and it looks different as your life changes. And that could be it looks different from day to day, from year to year, from era to era. But I also think a big part of self care is tending to what you want to do professionally and nurturing those curiosities and following your heart or following your intuition. And so, did you feel like it was both just a curiosity that pulled you, but also like your intuition was telling you like this is the direction I should start going, and I'm going to start moving in that direction?
Yes, yes. And just to follow up on that last comment you were making about midlife, I also love to call it a midlife awakening
Oh yeah,
because
I
I
love
think that
that.
there's another that's another aspect of where we open up to and we awaken to the possibilities of what it could be. And so to your point, yes, I felt like I was very curious. I'm a curious person by nature, and also my intuition and all the things that had led me up to that point. I really felt called in different areas. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about human design, and
Yes.
what that was one of the things that really helped me understand who I am and some of the gifts that I have and the purpose that I have in order to and so yes, to bring this forward, it was all these different facets along my journey, and that's partially why it took me so long. It took me over 10 years to really step into the business side of health coaching.
Yeah.
Even though I was a group fitness instructor, I was teaching people very informally about clean eating. I was just always there. Like I was saying before, it was just always there. So again, it felt natural to me to blend that science, the curiosity, the intuition all together and create my business.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about what your business offers, and I will absolutely link it in the show notes so our listeners can connect with you either on social or directly or just learn more about you. You mentioned in your introduction that you have a master's in yoga therapy. So, what does that look like? Because I think I'm familiar with the practice of yoga, and I think most people are. They have a sense of what yoga is, but I think there's probably a lot more to yoga than we realize. And so, what is yoga therapy, and how did you pursue essentially that degree?
Sure, absolutely. So back when I was teaching at the Y here where I live in Boone, they basically needed a yoga instructor. And at the time I was teaching other classes. And so I was like, oh, I'll go get my yoga
Yeah.
certification, or just the basic first level that I needed in order to teach it to help fill that void. And so I did go and I went and did the first level, and I got done with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love yoga. And up to that point, I mean, I was in my 30s. I was doing all the hard things. I was running, I was biking, I was trying to do half marathons. Like if it wasn't hard and just like, then it wasn't worth it to me. And so when I went to yoga, I thought, oh, this is gonna be so easy. And then it ended up not being easy.
Yes.
It was very challenging, and not just for my body, but for the mental part of it too. So it really brought in that for me. So then once I went past that first level, I was like, okay, get to my 200 hours. And then when I got to my 200 hours, which is kind of that baseline certification for yoga, I was looking at all my different options. And I'm just one of those people that I don't know, I knew I wanted to continue forward, but I oftentimes jokingly say I just like jumped off the cliff because I just went from 200 hours to a master's degree. But the more I looked at it, it was really what I wanted because it brought in the mind, body, and spirit aspects of it. And what yoga therapy ultimately is well, and what the difference is we go to a yoga class, it's very physical in nature. If we treat
Sure.
it like a workout, and that's the very much American way, Nothing wrong with that. It's a great workout. But yoga therapy, what it is it's going to help people in all the facets of yoga. So we're going to look more from, it might be movement, but it's very gentle movement.
Okay.
And then we're looking at meditation, we're looking at mindfulness, we're looking at intentional breathing. So you're looking at the layers of what we call the koshas. So the koshas are the physical body, the mental emotional body, the spiritual body, the
Okay.
breath body. So all these different bodies, all these different aspects that we're treating oftentimes in chronic conditions.
Yeah.
So those chronic conditions can range from everything, literally from anxiety to, oh my gosh, to Alzheimer's, to Parkinson's. So that's really what we studied. And pain's a big one too, because a lot of people are experiencing pain, and it's so challenging because it's an invisible disease. Um, so that's where the difference really lies within yoga and yoga therapy.
And as you journeyed through, your 200 hours, and for our listeners, does that mean you had 200 hours of practice or 200 hours of teaching?
It was the training,
The
but it's a
training.
combination. They have you do some hours that you have to give back to your community
Okay.
as well. So they want you to do some practice as well
Okay.
with
So
that.
as you journey through the 200 hours and then you decided to, essentially jump off the cliff and go into the master's in yoga therapy, what were you noticing or learning about yourself, if I may ask? Because I would imagine it was both like this intellectual pursuit of, you know, consuming knowledge and applying knowledge, but it obviously had to have been also a very internal change as well. So what were you noticing about yourself as you were pursuing this goal?
Yeah, such a great question, and it's interesting because I'm an open book, so I will be pretty forthright with where I was at. And what was happening in my life was that I went back to school in 2018, and it was a time where I had always, and I guess from what you're talking about, from that intellectual aspect, I'd always wanted a master's degree. I just didn't know in
Yeah.
what. And so pursuing a master's degree had literally been on my agenda, if you will, for since I was 22 years old. And basically, I tried actually a couple of different master's degrees, and both times went, nope, this isn't it. This isn't the right thing. And when I came across this program, my whole body was like, yes, this is it. This is what I need to do. And at the time, I'm thinking I get to do this so that I can go out and help other people. But as we all know, in situations like that, it ultimately ends up helping us
Yeah.
more than we ever anticipate. So halfway through the program, that is when I got divorced.
Okay.
So I met this group of women that I got to go over to Maryland to, we were a hybrid program. So it was in Maryland. I traveled over there once a month for a long weekend. So I had this huge network of support. I was learning all the tools of yoga therapy, going through one of the hardest times of my life. And it was one of the most challenging, of course, but rewarding things that could have been possibly happening for me all together collectively at that time. So, again, I mean, just being able to be literally fully immersed in all of the tools and resources of yoga therapy. Well, and then interestingly, that was 2019. And then what happened in
The
2020?
pandemic.
The
Yeah.
pandemic. So we had to move all of our clinicals to online. So
Okay.
we got to do some in-person clinicals on site, and then everything got moved online. And speaking of having all the tools and resources available to yourself at that point, the pandemic was still really hard. I
Yeah.
mean, even with all the tools and resources,
Yeah,
it was like,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, what do I do now?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, and that, it sounds like the community that you built going to Maryland once a month with this other group of women I mean, that you still have that community, but if you can't get together in person, the way you connect obviously changes. And so I would think that was also just a big change. Not only are you having to change the way you're receiving all the information and probably applying it, but now you no longer have that in-person support group that you had developed. So
Right. Yes, it definitely makes you feel or makes you be a little bit more just multi like faceted in terms of being able to do everything online. And honestly, I'm kind of grateful for it at this point. Back then, of course, being one-on-one would have been much more
Yeah.
helpful, but now I know that I can run my entire business
Yeah.
online, and it's completely going to be okay to be able to run it that way, and that I don't necessarily have to be in person. But definitely still have a small group of women that I'm still very, very close with from that group of that we all went through yoga therapy school together.
That's great. You said something just a bit ago, and you were talking about you'd always had this goal to earn a master's degree, and you had tried a couple of different programs, and you knew they weren't right for you. And I just want to say that it's really hard to say this isn't the right fit, whether it's education or a career or a relationship. And so I think that that takes great courage to, say I'm committed to doing something, and the first couple of times I tried to accomplish that goal, I had to say this isn't the right fit, and I had to pause. So kudos to you, because I think sometimes, at least in my experience, I can get so fixated on this is what I'm going to do. And then maybe not listening to myself along the way when it feels like it's not the right fit, but feeling like, I'm hell bent on doing it because I said I was going to do it. So good for you for
Right.
just exploring things and figuring out that you needed to pause until the right opportunity and the right course came along, because, you could have completed a different master's degree and you might not be, here today with this conversation that we're having. You might be in a completely
Right.
different space that could have served you, but ultimately it feels like you really followed your heart and your intuition. And I love it
I
when
did.
people can share those stories, because I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. So
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And
yeah.
it did. And I acknowledge that, and I appreciate it very much. And at the same time, I hope that I can also be a light to other women who
Yeah.
are looking for, or men. I mean, anybody who's looking for that, maybe like what is missing in my life. And especially like we talked about, bringing it full circle back to this midlife space, this midlife era that we are all, or not we are all in, but we all
Well,
at
we
some
are. The
point
two of
get
us are
to.
in.
You are, and I are.
Yeah.
Um, that we get to, and we start reflecting on, am I in the right career for
Yeah.
me? Am I in the right relationship for me? Am I, all these different things that are really big questions
Hmm.
that we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can in this lifetime to help serve ourselves and others at the same time.
Absolutely. You mentioned human design. So talk me through that and what you mean when you say human design,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
that, means to other people as well.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring it up because what you were saying about the having the courage and following my heart and all of that actually very much was it all tied back to human design. So when you look at like my story was I was a child who was overweight. I started with anxiety in middle school, and that anxiety followed me all the way through into, well, I mean, to present day, if I'm being really honest, but
Yep.
I just have a lot of tools and resources to be able to help manage it. But along the way, I also felt like there was something maybe different about me, and I just always couldn't put a finger on it. And so when I was going through school, even my undergrad is actually in corrections.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's
Interesting.
I know, and it's the same thing. I was following my heart because I was very interested in the human mind, the human experience, like what got people to that point that they were committing crimes, or what did they feel, from that sociological perspective of what was
Sure.
happening around them in their environment. So anyways, so it's like it's been this whole pathway that's led to a little bit chipping away a little bit more into the next step. But everything I did up to that point was preventative in nature. So it was like when I was working in corrections, I wanted to work on the preventative side. When I went into healthcare development and fundraising, it was very much like, let's help people before, if we can help fund equipment, programs, services to help, you know, before things are
Sure.
happening or as things are happening. So anyways, and then so this is like my big full circle of all these things. I learned of human design when I was, gosh, it was about 14, 15 years ago. And I had the good fortune of having this brought to me by a life coach. And at the time, to bring it back to this anxiety part of my life, at the time, anxiety had literally reached its peak for me.
Okay.
I was laying awake all night long. I had my second son was fairly young, so I even kind of wonder if it was like a hormonal thing
Sure.
also that was, gearing up a lot of anxiety in me. But I was kind of at that breaking point where I was like, I can't do this by myself anymore. So I actually went on medication,
Okay.
and about that time, a life coach came into my life through a mutual friend. And he said, I would love to teach you how to meditate if you'd be open to it. And I said, yes, please. I would
Yeah.
love to learn how to meditate. So I've been an avid meditator for 15 years. I'm fully supportive of medication. We all need help at different times and
Sure.
support in different ways. But for me, I was able to get off the medication in less than a year thanks to being able to do the meditation. So ultimately, that same life coach brought to me, he said, hey, I'm learning this new tool. Would you mind if I tried this out on you? And it was called Human Design. And for me, it was absolutely life changing because it is what human design is it's a combination of astrology and some Chinese, like the Chinese I Ching and
Okay.
the Kabbalah. I mean, it's like if all these things were to merge together, they take your birth data, you get this chart, and then this chart or this body graph has your chakras outlined
Yes.
on it. And so it's going to be a little bit different than yoga, but it's
Okay.
going to also be reflective of, if you know the yoga, chakras from yoga, you're going to kind of understand the body graph when you see it. So ultimately, there's 5 different types of energies, and the type of energy that I am is only in about 10% of the world.
Oh, wow.
So this brings me back to, I felt different
Yes.
because I'm a manifester. So manifesting energy types have this capacity to go out in the world and initiate more,
Okay.
and not that anybody else can't. That's, I always want to preface, we're all things in the chart, but we just have some leanings more towards one thing or another. So I was a manifester and going along my path and manifesting, like, okay, I was following my heart. This is what I want to do. And so what I also learned from that same person is being also with being a manifester, how I make decisions is called ego authority, which means that I decide things kind of within myself. My heart, so if you look at my chart, my heart and my throat are connected.
Okay.
So when I'm talking about something that I love or I'm passionate about, that is that's where I know that I'm hearing my truth,
Okay.
and it either resonates or it doesn't. And I'm
Okay.
like, okay, if sometimes I've literally said, okay, forget I said that. Like I'm just that
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't that's not making sense for me. I take that back. But if I am, talking about something and it feels like my whole body lights up, I feel like this is something that I get excited about, my heart is excited about it, then I know that that's what's meant for me. And so, in some ways, I believe that I felt that
Okay.
before I actually learned it
Sure.
from human design. And that I will tell everybody when I work with them on human design. I'm not going to tell you anything more than likely that you don't already know about yourself, but it's very affirming.
Sure. And it probably helps connect the dots on, like you said, I always felt a little different, or I always felt like something was unique about me. I don't remember the exact words you said, but
Yes.
yeah, yeah, affirming. And maybe my life makes sense now.
Yeah. Well, and it's true because when I learned that I was a manifester, what my question always was, well, why don't they just go do that? Like if they want to go do it, why don't they just go do it? And I couldn't understand that that was something that became more natural to me.
Okay.
And versus other people might feel like they're running into a brick wall, so to speak, if
Mm-hmm.
they keep trying to initiate something rather than responding to it.
Okay. Are you able to share what the other types are? There's manifestors, and then like how many types are there? I guess like let's
Yep.
start with that. Are there like 10 types or 5 types or 3 types? What's the
Yeah.
number we're looking at here?
Yeah, there's 5 types. So I mentioned the manifester, and then there's the generator. The generator is the primary number one energy type that's out in the world. So generators are our worker bees. They wake
Okay.
up in the morning, they have a full battery, and they work hard all day long, and their battery is complete at the end of the day, and they go to sleep. So
Okay.
they have access to their own energy, is basically what that comes down to. And if they're finding that they're not passionate about what they're doing or excited about what they're doing throughout the day, their battery may not completely go to zero. And
Okay.
so then so this is where I get to work with people. So if they're finding that they're having a hard time sleeping
Mm-hmm.
or anything like this, where it's like, okay, let's take a look at what it is that we need to do to make sure that you have completed your battery and your energy for the day so that you can be in a space of rest. So the complementing energy to generators is a manifesting generator. So they're going to have those manifester qualities of wanting to initiate alongside the energy to do, which is that
Okay.
generator. So it's like they kind of converge together. So it can be
Okay.
an interesting type. And what I love about the manifesting generator is that they're usually multi passionate people, which means
Okay.
they love a lot of different things. They may have their hands in a lot of different
Okay.
things along the way, or they might be interested in one thing and then 3 years later they're interested in another
Okay.
thing. And so I think that's the other thing, that giving people permission that that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people think there's something wrong with them, or maybe their partner doesn't see that
Yeah.
as a gift.
Yeah.
They see that as like, oh, now what,
Now
kind of
what?
thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's more like, actually, this is what you're intended to do.
Yeah.
And they're really it's a great energy type. I mean, they're all great, but
So
it's an
generator is the most prevalent and
Mhm.
manifester is the most unique.
Actually, there's one more that's more unique than the manifester. So there's generator, manifesting generator, and then we have projectors.
Okay.
And projectors are what I would consider our teachers, our guides, our counselors in
Okay.
life. So the lesson for projectors oftentimes is that they will give unsolicited advice because they're very intuitive and they
Sure.
can
Okay.
see the big picture, or they can see what's best in the situation. So oftentimes it's just, again, very minor tweaks when I work with people of like, hey, just maybe looking at it from the perspective of, if people are not appreciating your advice, just simply asking if you can give it.
Yeah.
And then you open the door to them being more open to receiving that. So those projector types, so once you get into, so generators and manifesting generators have access to their own energy. So that same kind of battery
Okay.
process. You get into projectors and manifestors, we don't necessarily have access to our own energy. So that might look like have, like, for me, I've literally, from the time I got permission to do this, I've been doing it every single day, which goes in like, hand in hand with my meditation practice. But I take about a 20 to 30 minute rest every afternoon, and so that's when I meditate. And now for a generator, that might totally mess up their whole day. And they may find that they're like, I can't rest. And that's very normal too. But for me, I don't, my battery might go up and down all throughout the day, just depending on what I'm doing, or if I'm around people, not around people. And so I need to recharge to kind of get me through that last part of the day. So there's that. And then the last type is reflectors. Reflectors are, when I mentioned when you open up a body graph and you look at it and there's chakras, there, some of them are filled in and some of them are not. So that would get a little bit more into a little more detail. We can do that in podcast episode number 2. But in a reflector, they're completely open. Nothing's filled in.
Okay.
So, which means that they have a lot of um, outside influences. It means that they can take on a lot of energy from other people. They are going to be people that need a full lunar cycle to make a decision, which sounds like, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Hey, let me get back to you in a month. Not like that. It's more like big decisions.
Okay.
Big decisions. It's like most of us are like, I need a night or two to sleep on it.
Yeah.
They, in order to really feel into the confidence of a big life decision, they need more time.
Okay.
Approximately a month would be ideal for
Okay.
them. So yeah, they're very unique. Like 1%
Okay.
of
Okay.
the world are reflectors. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm so curious. I wonder what I am, and maybe I can work with you to find that out. So.
Yes, I would love that.
So how does astrology fit into the mix? Because we talked about this a little bit, maybe a month
Hmm.
ago before
Yes.
we, on a different call, and we talked a little bit about how I'm a Gemini by my newspaper horoscope, but I might not actually be a Gemini. So tell us about
Right.
astrology, how that fits into the picture.
Yeah.
And I think this is just a fascinating topic that a lot of people would be interested in. So share what you'd
Yes.
like. I'm all
Yeah.
ears.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so funny because I am not a trained astrologist by any means. So for me, it's been purely interest based. And then once I started studying human design, and astrology is definitely part of it, because astrology, it's using your birth data, which also human design does as well. And so ultimately, what we know of astrology is the traditional sense of astrology. And I'm just going to reference my notes here a little bit because, like I said,
No, that's okay. I
I'm not an official astrologist, so I want to make sure that I accurately portray this. But there's traditional astrology where basically they start the whole system is at 0 degrees of Aries, and that is based on the vernal equinox. So that's what we know of traditional astrology. Was this started, thousands and thousands of years ago, and basically every house or every section, every planet is split up by 30 degrees by 30 degrees. So it's very linear, if you will, in terms of that. So it's kind of like I was born July 1st, so I am a Cancer. You said you were born, what's your birthday?
June 5th.
June 5th. So you're a Gemini. So it just kind of falls into
Yep.
those categories. And that's what we know of. We read in the magazines growing up, and still probably even today. It's also very earth based, or considered to be very earth based. So it can be along those lines to like more psychological or more personality based interpretation. So, very much people can resonate with traditional astrology in a lot of ways. And then, what you and I were talking about, which kind of blew my mind also, that I recently learned, the person that I'm learning or getting my certification of human design through, she teaches and trains on what's called true sidereal or true sky. And a
Okay.
lot of people haven't even heard of this. And it's based in astrology, but it impacts our charts in human design as well. Because what happened is that it's called true sky because it's actually what's happening in the sky literally right now.
Okay.
This accounts for that 24 degrees shift that is from the Earth's axis, like over, I think it's every, and I don't want to mess this up, but it's like every 72 years or
Okay.
something like that, we're shifting 1 degree
Okay.
very, very subtly, or maybe it's every 80 years, something like that, somewhere around there. So it's more, instead of earth based and being kind of grounded in nature, it's more sky based or space based, because it's really, if you were to go and look in the sky today, it's going to be different than what a traditional astrologist is going to say is
Okay.
happening. So this can be a little bit more soul based. So that's where, again, people may resonate with both of their charts. And I say both their charts because that 24-degree shift will oftentimes put us one or two placements ahead of where we are. So, like for me, it would be Cancer. Instead of a Cancer, I'd actually be a Gemini. Now, when I look at those qualities, I can resonate with both of them.
Okay.
And so, and for you, what did you say you were?
Well, I'm a Gemini. So I would it be a Taurus
Mm,
possibly?
yes.
Is that
Yeah.
one ahead of Gemini? And I feel like that day we had the phone call, I did some Googling and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense because I've never really resonated with the Gemini profile or characteristics. And then when I was looking at the Taurus, I think they said something like they're very grounded and maybe what was another characteristic?
Yeah.
Um, Thoughtful. I don't
Yeah.
know. It just a few of the traits that they use to describe the Taurus type, I was like, oh, that
Yeah.
sounds more like me than a Gemini. So,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So a Gemini, I believe, is an air sign. So they can tend to be a little bit more aloof. And that's what I said to you, is I said, you don't strike me as somebody who's aloof or like in an air sign.
yeah,
You are very grounded. So that, which is a Taurus is a earth energy.
yeah,
And so that makes sense. And so, and again, it's whatever resonates for you.
sure.
Like there's not a prescriptive thing that says, XYZ, this is exactly, what you are. But I think that's kind of fun that we can bring in both of them.
Absolutely.
And also, since you didn't resonate with being a Gemini, now you kind of have a little bit different perspective. So I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
absolutely. What do you think the biggest misconception about the type of coaching and, wellness space that you're in is? And I ask that because I'm a wellness professional. I know a lot of other wellness professionals, and I'm friends with a lot of wellness people or like-minded people. And I feel like sometimes we get those woo-woo labels thrown. Oh, that's like a little woo-woo. And like, what do you
Yeah.
think the biggest misconception is about, whether it's human design or astrology or
Yeah.
yoga, intuition?
Yeah.
Like, do you have an opinion on that? Like, what might
Yeah.
cause someone to be like, I don't know if I trust that process?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I definitely can connect with that question very much so, because I think there's a very grounded aspect of my practice and my what I offer to my clients, and that is starting them off in very much this basic, like water, nutrition,
Sure.
getting all these things in place. And then what happens is ultimately towards the end of our time together, I have a 12-week program, and ultimately those last 3 sessions is where I work with them on human design.
Okay.
And what I love about being able to bring human design in is just all the reasons we've talked about. It's personalized. It helps people understand, like, for myself, oh, that's why I always felt different. Or, oh, now I know how I best make decisions. And now I can learn to trust myself a little bit more, because our mind is so powerful, and our powerful mind will take over
Sure.
in times when our body is saying no, 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 and your mind's going, well, yes, I've got to go do this thing for this person, or I've got to
Yeah.
go do this or that. And so it's just part of my coaching process of being able to help people go home back to themselves,
Sure.
and in a way that they can trust their intuition, trust themselves. So yeah, it might be a little bit woo woo to people or that type of thing, but I have yet to have one client say no thank you, I would not like to know more about my chart or about
Yeah.
myself. I mean, people are usually very curious about it, and I think that it again, there's so many, like you mentioned, there's so many wellness professionals out there, and there's a lot of different niches that people can work from. And I think that this for me just allows one level of something different that I'm providing to clients and to people that they may enjoy learning more about.
Yeah.
So,
And I think a lot of change or all change starts with self awareness. And
yes.
when we think about the whole person, the mind, body, spirit, I think a lot of people focus on the body aspect, the physical health. And I think that's, like you said, a great place to start because people are maybe a little more eager to start there or they find that to be like the trusted path. But there's so much more to your health than your physical health. And if you're not tending to your mental health, your emotional health, it's just going to be really hard to sustain good physical health. And so it's all connected. And I feel like when I went to college in 2000, so I was a freshman the 2000, and then I graduated in 04. When I think about my curriculum in college, it was very body based, exercise science, lots of tobacco cessation campaigns that we were trying to, implement and plan, and hydration campaigns and pedometer campaigns. That really dates it. It was, the era of pedometers,
Yes.
but now I feel like if I were to step back into those classrooms in 2026, I think the curriculum, or at least my hope is that the curriculum would be much more well-rounded, for lack of a better, expression, like connecting the mind, the body, and the spirit, because there's just so much there, and we know
Yes.
that through science. We know that
Yeah.
our mental health is just as important as our physical health. So,
100%. And if I can quick say something too about that, I love that because it's so true. And I do believe that we are evolving.
hmm
And part of what I was most passionate about actually when I got out of school was bringing all this to
yeah.
healthcare and working more in the healthcare sense. And it's interesting because I think there's a lot more capacity on the coasts for East
hmm
Coast, West Coast,
Sure.
to bring in more of this. I have one of my friends from yoga therapy school is literally a yoga therapist for an oncology unit in a
Oh,
children's hospital.
yeah.
And so things like that is so important to part of that healing process. I don't, and again, I don't want to discount that we're not ready in the Midwest because I think we are, and I think we're slowly chipping away at that and having more of those types of options available to people and teaching our medical students in
hmm
early on that all these aspects beyond the physical body, beyond that biomedical model.
Yeah.
And I think that we're slowly getting there. I think people, and just some physicians of course are more open to it, or they seek more of a naturopathic
Sure.
type of route for
Sure.
themselves as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this conversation has been fascinating. I'm really excited to connect you with our listeners. So your website address I will drop in the show notes, but for people that are maybe just listening right now and not going to read the show notes, what is your website?
Sure. It's Your Wise Self with Sarah, no H.com.
And what would you say, in terms of someone working with you one-on-one, who, primarily work with women, but you can work with men? Tell us a little bit about your target audience here.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like my target audience really is going to be that midlife, like I mentioned, a lot of the things that's happening in terms of anxiety, kids leaving the nest, all these different changes are happening in midlife, and I feel like that's the primary market that I cater to.
Okay.
But when I do work with corporate level or groups or anything like that, I oftentimes will have workshops. I have men attend my workshops. I'm not saying that I wouldn't work with a man. They can definitely opt in. I just
Sure.
think the majority of people who will seek me out are women
All
in
right.
midlife.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I will make sure people know how to connect with you. And yeah, this has been a great
Thank
conversation, and I'm more curious now about human design than I was 45 minutes ago. So we'll see. We'll see
thank
where
you
it
so
takes
much.
me.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for the time and the
Yes,
opportunity, Johanna.
absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Emotion Well. Employee and Family Resources is a 501c3 nonprofit organization located in Des Moines, Iowa. We support communities, workplaces, and schools with comprehensive behavioral health services. If you would like to contribute to our mission, please click on the donation link in our show notes.